We've heard it all the time that it can sometimes be lonely at the top. As an owner or a CEO, you're carrying the weight, you're carrying the risk, you're carrying a lot of the decision-making burden. And sometimes it's nice to have someone you can share it with. And so that's what we're creating, a network of businesses that will leverage each other's gifts, talents, expertise to be able to go a whole lot further.
That was a quote from a recent conversation that I had with my friend and fellow CEO, Jonathan Torres, and he goes by Torres. And, it really hit me because Torres has really been in the trenches. He's led both nonprofit organizations as well as for-profit companies. So he has this unique breadth of experience. And now he's building something really powerful. Peer groups for CEOs and owners who really want to lead with purpose and not do it alone. And honestly, that really resonated with me because I've had those seasons where I was that CEO, feeling the weight, carrying the risk, making tough calls, and wondering who I could turn to. And that's why I'm in a peer group. And that's why this conversation with Torres, really, it's not just another podcast interview. It was an encouragement to me personally and professionally. And I got to imagine that it will be for you as well. Now, as I said, Torres has led nonprofits, but most recently, he served as the CEO of a home and commercial security company based here in Memphis. But today, he is focused on mentoring and leading and coaching business leaders here in Memphis as a chair for C12. Now, that is a faith-based peer advisory group for CEOs who want to build great businesses for a greater purpose. And this conversation reminded me, and I hope it reminds you, that we weren't meant to lead alone and that we were meant for a bigger purpose. Now, there's strength in community, there's power in shared purpose. And when we surround ourselves with the right people, we don't just build better businesses, we become stronger and more influential leaders in the places that we've been called to lead.
You're listening to the Growth Minded Marketing Podcast. I'm Annie Laurie Walters, joined by our host, Steve Phipps, President and CEO of Wayfind Marketing. In this podcast, we deliver strategy-first marketing insights for B2B CEOs and their teams.
In this episode, Torres and I talk about leadership and purpose, but we also dig into how culture and identity shape your company's marketing and sales efforts. Because if your internal culture isn't clear, your external message isn't going to connect. We talk about the link between what happens inside your business and how it shows up in the way that you attract, serve, and retain customers. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Memphis leader and CEO, Jonathan Torres. Torres, you've got a lot of experience. I'm excited to have you here on the show. You've served in a variety of different leadership capacities, both nonprofit and for-profit. And so I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to share with us today. And so, Torres, if you would you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit about your background and what you've been up to recently.
Sure. Thanks for having me here. I've spent 20 years in the nonprofit space, first with an organization called Young Life, then with another local organization, Memphis Athletic Ministries, better known as MAM, and loved my experience there, being able to grow both a smaller team to a team at MAM with over 100 employees and part-time and full-time, and then transitioning into the business world at Phipps Protection, a local residential and commercial security company. And now I'm currently working for C12 Memphis. I'm the chair here in Memphis, a faith-based peer advisory group for business leaders and CEOs.
Fantastic. Now, Torres, it's 20 plus years spanning, as you said, both nonprofit and the business world. And so you made the jump from nonprofit into for-profit a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago. So what was that transition like?
The transition was really surprisingly seamless in the sense of balance sheets all look the same, P&Ls all look the same, all of the financial aspects of it look the same. On the service side, going from the nonprofit into the business world, our customers, while they might look different, were still customers. They still had great experiences, some of them having poor experiences, ways to fix those experiences. So the leadership aspect of it was very much the same. And I think the biggest thing I learned was that regardless of who you are leading, whether it is people working for the nonprofit sector or the business sector, people are people, and they need to be led with integrity and clarity and vision and with a purpose. And they need to be led with authenticity, just being who you are all the time. And I think that when we look at our leadership, whether that's in a business or a nonprofit, we have to be leading from a place of just being honest and open with our people and leading them with integrity.
One of the things that I really appreciate about you as a leader, and this ties into what you were just saying, and that is the importance of vision and casting that vision and leading towards that, but doing so with integrity, doing so with authenticity. And of course, you and I had the chance to work together for almost a year while you were at Phrase. I got to see firsthand how you led your team to develop core values and you cast a very compelling vision. And so talk briefly, if you would, about the process of and the importance of that and ultimately how that impacts bringing in new customers and growing the business.
They want to do X and then they want to do Y, but a strategy is a lot more based around the idea of what is going to set us apart from our competitors, from the people that are in the same space as us, whether that's the quality of service, whether that's the quality of product, the quality of whatever it is that you're selling. And so if you have a compelling strategy of how you will win the game, whatever that game is, then I think that's the first part, is having a compelling strategy. Then I think it's a matter of finding the right people to join you in executing that strategy and making sure that everyone's aligned, everyone knows what direction we're rowing in. And then you're able to rally an entire company around something that is bigger than them. It's a greater purpose. And I believe that when you have a greater purpose, then you have a great business. And when you have a great business, that's when you can really succeed.
So having a clear purpose, something that's bigger than just making revenue, than just making profit. And of course, obviously a business needs that, but to have something that's bigger and more compelling. And as you said, rallying the right people around that. Because not just anybody is going to be on board with that.
No, absolutely not. Some people just honestly, they are there to collect a paycheck, and that is okay. You're going to have those people on your team. But the majority, I would say at least 80% of your core leaders, of the people that are right alongside you, they have to be in like-minded vision and strategy and purpose so that you can really have synergy around how you execute all of the different facets of your business, whether it's the finances, the operations, the communication, the marketing, the sales. Any part of it has to be rowing in the same direction. If you have someone going left when everyone's going right, it really drains the energy, it drains the time, and then you're no longer leading the business. You're just putting out fires. And no business leader wants to be constantly putting out fires. Not you, not me, not anybody. We'd rather be leading with joy and excitement and not have to micromanage and get into the weeds.
And so one particular part of the business, one group of folks that you just mentioned that I want to dig into a little bit more is sales. In a lot of companies, sales and marketing, at best, they just tolerate each other. And oftentimes they battle back and forth with each other. And I know this to be true about you, that you value straightforwardness. Answer the hard questions. Don't shy away from a customer or prospect who's going to ask you the hard questions, and lead with honesty. Just anticipate their questions. And of course, we leverage a framework called They Ask You Answer, which has been recently rebranded Endless Customers. And within that framework, that is one of the big things, is answer the hard questions. I know that you instilled that from a cultural perspective, but the reality is, especially with salespeople, not all, I don't want to broad stroke every salesperson out there, but a lot of salespeople bristle at the idea or the thought of answering some of those questions in a very open and honest way. So what was your experience like working with some salespeople, both the wins and the challenges?
Some of the challenges are the realities for a salesperson of what if we put our pricing on the website? What if we actually were to tell people up front with clarity about our pricing? Well, the normal thing is that our competitors will see it and that others will see it, and they'll maybe get a competitive edge and they'll undercut us in pricing. Some of the realities to that are that may be true. we may not be the lowest price every time, and that's okay. And that's because we want to find the right customer, and we want to find the customer that is educated. They understand the value that our business brings. They understand the service that we're going to provide. They understand all of that encompasses that higher price. And so you have to just be honest and tell your customer, yeah, we may not be the right fit for every single one of our customers in the city, that there is a certain level that we expect from the customer of investment that they're going to make into our product, whether that is to buy the product, the service, there is an investment. And if they understand the investment and they also understand the value, then it's okay to have those hard conversations. And so being able to have a hard conversation really is going to make it so much easier for the salesperson. But that buy-in at first can be the real hurdle, the real obstacle to overcome. But when they do it, that's where I think you see the big wins. I think you can really get a team rallied around being as honest and open and transparent as possible so that we have very educated and informed customers so that they can make the best decision to solve their problems. We are there to solve their problems. Every business is supposed to be solving a problem. And if we can guide our customers to solve those problems themselves by finding the right solutions, then like you've told me a million times, they become the hero, not us. And so we want to make sure that we're setting our customers up for maximum success.
I love that perspective because that is treating the buyers with respect. And it's not demeaning to them or belittling them by withholding information that they genuinely want. The old adage that we've all heard, nobody wants to be sold, but
No,
people
not at
do
all.
want to buy. I think when we take a fear-based position, if I don't want to give away our pricing, I don't want to answer these hard questions because what if they don't choose us? But if you're the buyer, if you're the customer, how do you want the salesperson to respond to you? When you're asking about pricing, do you want them to hem and haw and sit behind a pitch deck, or do you just want them to shoot straight so you know whether or not you can afford it or not?
The reality is that our customers are going to make decisions based off of what they value, whether that is their time, their finances, their energy that they're going to have to put into it. They're going to make an investment. And if we can help them make the best investment, they really feel like they're getting quality service, they're getting a quality product, and then they become loyal, faithful customers. And that's ultimately what we want to build. You want to build a customer base that is loyal and faithful to the brand, loyal and faithful to the business, and that they become the ones who sing your praises, who are making referrals, who are going out and talking about how great a service and experience they had with your business.
Absolutely. And I think there's a level of confidence in what you can deliver that is the basis for being able to answer those questions openly and honestly. And I would even draw it back to what you were talking about earlier, and that's having a clear cut strategy. And part of that is who is the right customer? Because if you're aiming at everybody, then I have yet to meet the company that has a marketing budget to market to everybody.
There probably are some out there. I just don't know them.
Nobody's introduced me to Warren Buffett yet. So I've not had the opportunity to pitch marketing services. So let's shift gears here a little bit. I'll go back to the sales team because there's probably some CEOs or owners who are listening and they would be on board with the idea of, I want to answer our buyers' questions, even the hard questions, because ultimately we know that it's going to build trust. And for the right people, it's going to position us as the most trusted company, the most trusted voice in our space. So how do you navigate working with a salesperson who is very resistant to the idea of taking that approach of educating rather than selling and putting everything on the bottom shelf, so to speak?
I think we need to build a culture in our business of that. And if the leader builds a culture of it from their perspective, the leader or owner is someone who answers the hard questions when employees want to know, how is this going to impact my bottom line? When they have questions about some of the decisions you make, that again, we as leaders answer those hard questions. If we can build an entire culture in company around this idea from the top, then they can see, well, I appreciate it as an employee. I appreciate it as someone who is invested into this company and has to sell this service, sell this product. And so if I'm receiving that, how much more do the customers want to receive that? And so I think it does start with the leader, starts with that sales manager, that executive, whoever is running that team, to be able to answer the hard questions with honesty, transparency, and integrity, and a ton of clarity, being able to maybe go a little deeper than they would want to go in explaining the why. And when you explain the why, that you've made a decision or you change the comp plan or you change something that impacts them, they can then go, well, I can see how this benefits the business or it benefits the company or it benefits me. I'm on board. And so if you can lead the business that way, build that culture, then when it comes time to have that conversation about doing it for our customers, it makes it that much simpler. But if we can't answer the hard questions as a leader of why we're making these decisions, it's really hard for them to follow that idea all the way out to our marketing and our communication.
I love that you went to culture, treating each other the way that we would want to be treated. And it starts before we even start the marketing, it has to start with the culture of the business. Because you're right, if as a member of a company or a team, if internally things are closed off, there's no authenticity, and people aren't willing to have the hard conversations, then it's going to be really difficult for the sales team to buy into that. What happens when you do those things and you still run into a salesperson who's just not buying in? How would you approach something like that?
The realities are that if there becomes a crossroad that you have to get through with an employee, they may not be the best fit for your company. And unfortunately, there are people that don't want to buy in, and that happens, and they might need to go work somewhere else. We have to hold the line as leaders of what we're going to build in our culture, what we're going to accept in our culture. And culture is king. We can talk a lot about core values on a wall. We can talk a lot about all these things, but if we don't actually implement them and run the business in accordance with those core values, then it's really just words on a wall and some cool decorations and some stuff that you can throw on your website, but they don't mean anything. And so there just are realities that sometimes, no matter how much that salesperson is good or that they're great or they could sell ice to an Eskimo, the realities are that there is a certain expectation and a certain level of authenticity and culture that we have to build in our businesses if we're going to have great businesses. You can have a good business, you can make money and have revenue, but I think what sets a great business apart is having that culture that really dictates how we operate.
I dare say that a lot of business owners and CEOs, when they think about building the organization and they're thinking about sales and marketing, the company culture is probably not at the top of the list that they're thinking of as it relates to part of their growth strategy. What I'm hearing and what I've seen, and we've even talked about this with other clients, is that when you implement something like what you've talked about, a culture of transparency, of honesty, and then not only internally, but with your customers, treat them with respect, treat them the way that you want to be treated when you're the buyer. Answer the hard questions honestly, openly. Don't try to play the shell game where you skirt around it. I mean, people detect the BS, and it's the same thing with employees. They detect the BS. They know if leadership is playing a shell game. I think the businesses that are easiest to grow, and I use the term easy loosely, are the ones that are companies and cultures of integrity, because that honesty and that openness with the buyers, those aren't tactics. That's the culture. That's not just a strategy. It's deeper than strategy. It's the culture. And that just carries all the way through. And I think those are the types of companies that people really want to do business with.
Absolutely. Because when they feel like they're getting the runaround, or all of a sudden they're getting tacked on with extra fees and random things that are popping up. Well, I wasn't expecting this. I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't ready for this. I didn't budget for that. All of a sudden you've built a wall with your customer instead of a bridge. And now that's where they go online and they talk about a negative experience. They're going to go online and they're going to throw up horrible reviews. They're going to tell their friends, don't ever do business with this company. And that is actually how you kill a company, is a poor experience. You kill a company by having an experience that no one enjoys, that is shrouded in mystery. And next thing you know, the customer is telling everyone on earth about how crooked you are as a business person. And that is the last thing any of us want.
It's an important shift, especially when we're talking about sales, because I know a lot of times the tendency is let's respond to the hot lead right now. And if they don't indicate that they're ready to buy this minute, or if they're asking the hard questions, we're going to try to pass over them, or we're going to do this salesy kind of thing. But when you take the longer view and you recognize, what are we going to get? What potentially happens as a result of this? Are they going to have trust in us because we answer the hard questions honestly? Or, as you pointed out, maybe they feel like they get hoodwinked or sort of cajoled into something. And ultimately, they're really upset. And that doesn't make for a good customer experience.
Not at all. And the same is true for customers in the business world. The same is true for donors in the nonprofit world. The same is true in many different facets when you're dealing with the for-profit or nonprofit side. No one wants to feel hoodwinked. No one wants to feel deceived or lied to. Everyone wants to feel like they're partners. And if you can build a partnership with your customers, it goes a long way. If you can build a partnership with your donors, you are actually able to create change. If you can build a partnership with your employees, they will go the extra mile. And so if we can see the people that are working for us, our customers, not as simply dollar signs, not simply as overhead, but that we see them as partners, I think we're changing the very culture of the business as well to build something great.
So speaking of partnering and building something great, you are now with C12. And for folks that aren't familiar with C12, I'll let you give a little bit more of an explanation, but you're going to be working with, and C12 is a faith-based organization working specifically with business owners, with CEOs, and developing these relationships ultimately to help them run better businesses, but to have more impact in their families and their communities, spiritually, et cetera. So why don't you talk a little bit about what led you to C12 and what that looks like for the next chapter for you?
Sure. So I've been a member of C12 now for 4 years, and I started while I was at Memphis Athletic Ministries. I continued while I was at Phrase Protection, and it was incredible for me to be able to have a group of men and women who were peers. They were in CEO seats. They were leading businesses. They were owners, and they were trying to create what we've been talking about, great businesses for a greater purpose. And so when you have that group of people that you can go to and go, hey, I'm having this issue in HR. I'm having this issue in sales. I'm having this issue with this specific individual in my business. And you can have some other wise counsel that can point you in the right direction. You can partner together and build these businesses together. There's just a ton more fuel on the fire. We've heard it all the time that it can sometimes be lonely at the top. And that is true. It can be lonely at the top. There's some realities that as an owner or a CEO, you're carrying the weight, you're carrying the risk, you're carrying a lot of the decision-making burden. And sometimes it's nice to have someone you can share it with. And so that's what we're creating at C12, is peer advisory groups that can, of like-minded individuals that can lean on each other, work together, support each other, and partner together to create not just a single great business, but to create a network of businesses that will leverage each other's gifts, talents, expertise to be able to go a whole lot further. And so I'm now going into the role of kind of a coach and mentor and sometimes just a facilitator of conversations so that these CEOs, owners, and leaders can all work together to, one, change Memphis for the better, change our city, our region, our state, our nation. And so C12 is an international business. We are in countries across the globe. And so what if we had an incredible movement? Again, we're faith-based. And so if we had an incredible movement for God to work in all of these businesses and therefore work in the lives of employees and customers across our globe.
Yeah, man, I love that everything that you've done has had some sort of a vision and there's a deeper purpose to it. And just having gotten to know you over the last year, I know that this is a perfect fit for you and your vision, not only to help impact people, but your desire to impact Memphis, the surrounding area, and beyond. So I'm excited to see what happens as you step into this new space. And I know God's going to be faithful in that. And so if somebody's listening and they're thinking, C12 sounds really fascinating, I want to learn more, how could they get in touch with you?
They can start by jumping on our website, c12memphis.com, and they can fill out a little information. I can reach out to them and we can get the conversation going. It's funny because as I look at going into this new adventure, I'm looking at our website, I'm looking at our social media, I'm looking at all the things that I've talked with you in the past, and I'm going, oh man, I've got a lot of work to do. So we're in the process of evaluating everything, trying to really communicate clearly what our vision is, what our strategy is, so that we can gather as many CEOs and owners and business leaders across the city. So reach out to us at c12memphis.com and we will get in touch with you.
And to clarify, that's the letter C.
Yeah, the letter
spelled
C
out.
and then 12, 1, 2. So c12memphis.com.
Fantastic. Torres, thank you so much for joining me today. I've loved, again, just hearing your perspective on things. And as usual, I've got some good takeaways from our conversation. So thanks for being on here and look
Thank
forward
you,
to seeing
Steve. Appreciate
how
it.
things go.
We will talk more soon.
Wow, that was rich. I love how Torres kept circling back to values, not just for himself, but for his team. It's rare to hear a CEO talk that openly about leading from the inside out.
Absolutely. What stood out to me is how intentional he's been, whether in business, ministry, or mentoring CEOs. He's not chasing tactics. He's working from a place of purpose. And that's a great reminder for all of us. Get your clarity first and then act.
And I know we talk a lot about strategy here, but what I heard was alignment. Torres kept coming back to aligning vision, people, and action. And when all that clicks, marketing gets a whole lot simpler.
That's it. When your team knows where you're headed and why, and you have connection with your values and purpose, then marketing can finally start doing the job that it's supposed to do, because it's really expressing what is already true internally. And honestly, that's one of the reasons why we offer marketing coaching here at Wayfind.
See, there's so much to unpack in that conversation. I wanted to dig a little deeper into a few things that you and Torres touched on. One thing is that y'all were talking about how culture affects sales. Can you unpack that a little more for our listeners?
Absolutely. One of the things that Torres and I talked about is that buyers want honesty. They want honest answers to their questions about pricing, about problems. And so when a company's culture is not focused on honesty and openness and transparency, then that translates into salespeople who aren't going to be transparent and open and honest with buyers. And it's hard to convince a salesperson that they need to be open and answer those hard questions when their culture doesn't support that. But whereas when you have a culture like what Torres was building that is focused on educating the buyer and answering their questions openly and honestly, because that's what's happening internally, then it becomes much easier for the salesperson to do that, because they're not going to stay at that organization long if they're not a good fit for the values that the company is built on. And that translates in from the internal experience into the customer experience.
Would you say that also helps you attract your ideal customers?
Yeah, I think it does. One of the things that we talk to companies about is building trust and credibility. And one of the biggest ways to do that is, it's simple, but it's not always easy. And that is create content that is answering your buyers' questions. Because we know that in today's marketplace, buyers are actively researching and they're using AI to gather that information. And they have tools and resources now that allow them to get past all the BS. And so the companies that aren't just trying to give a sales pitch, but legitimately trying to help their buyers make the best decision, those are the ones that are going to stand out and build trust compared to the ones that are trying to hide information or make every negative seem like a positive.
Steve, I noted in the podcast how you mentioned salespeople might bristle at the butt of answering some specific types of questions in a very open and honest way. How would you coach somebody through that?
Yeah, that was definitely one of the things that Torres and I talked about, and things that he and I talked about when he and I had a coaching relationship. And first, let me say that I am a big proponent of companies answering buyers' questions openly and honestly. Now, we use a framework called Endless Customers. Also, people may be familiar with that as they ask and answer. And the idea is that when people are asking questions like about price and problems, the best of comparisons, reviews, things like that, we call it the big five, they want honest answers. I mean, think about it. When you're the buyer, Do you want to be sold? Do you want to get a sales pitch, or do you want to get good, trustworthy information that helps you make a better decision? Of course, you want honest answers so that you can make the best decision. So when a CEO is bought in on that, they want to build a culture that is built on honesty and transparency. That doesn't mean you tell the buyers everything, but it does mean you don't try to snowball them. And so part of what Torres and I were talking about was, how does that work when you are trying to build this culture and you're creating content for the website? You want your sales team honestly answering people's questions. Somebody asks about price. Again, it doesn't mean you give them everything, but you at least give them an answer. You don't try to hide it. So how do you address that when you have a salesperson that's bristling at that thought, at that idea? And that's where it comes down to, part of it is coaching. Ultimately, what you're building out here is, the big question is, does this person's values align with the company's values? And if the company values integrity and honesty and openness, and this person just doesn't have that value alignment, it may be that eventually you're getting rid of that person. Now, before you get there, there's a coaching opportunity. There's an opportunity to dig in and ask questions and try to uncover and understand, what's the resistance? What are they afraid of? And sometimes it's helping a salesperson reframe their perspective by putting themselves in the buyer's perspective, because sometimes salespeople have just been trained a certain way. And I've had these conversations with sales teams of asking the simple question: who's a better customer for you? The customer who's educated and they've been able to do the research and they're well informed, or the one that doesn't have a lot of information and who comes in uninformed? Typically, it's the educated buyer, especially when they've been educated on your content, because they have, in a lot of cases, qualified themselves. But if you've held them at a distance, you've kept information back, how does that make you feel when you're the one who's being kept in the dark? You're asking about pricing because you don't even know if this is in your budget, but they're telling you have to go through these 3 or 4 steps before you can even get any idea what the pricing looks like. Well, that's frustrating. That doesn't build trust. So again, it does come back to that cultural alignment, that value alignment. And that means in some cases, there's some hard conversations, there's some coaching opportunities. But in some cases, ultimately, it comes down to recognizing maybe that person's not the right fit. And then you go and you find someone who is.
I think he was talking about, too, the mentality of building partnerships with your customers and how that can go a long way. And I thought that was really powerful, too.
Absolutely. And I think that it goes to mutual respect.
Right.
When the salesperson simply sees, or a company simply sees, the customer as a number, and it's all about hitting the goals without an emphasis on educating the buyers so they can make the best decision, you get more of it. You get more of the customer frustration versus that mutual respect, that partnership type mind, where the company is genuinely interested in helping the right customers make the best decisions. And those are the customers that are going to stick around a lot longer.
Just to wrap this up, I know that you and Torres talked a good bit about the peer group that he is leading now. And I know that you are a part of a peer group. Can you just talk a little bit about the value of that and how that's made an impact for you personally?
One of the loneliest jobs is being a business owner or a CEO. Variety of reasons for that. And so being in a peer group is incredibly valuable, because there are decisions that CEOs and owners need to make that they can't talk to their teams about. There are some things that they could share with their spouse, but they might not get the type of feedback that they need to help them make that decision. And so sometimes it's just nice knowing that there are other people who are having similar challenges. There's opportunity to learn from other people's mistakes, other people's wins. So I love the fact that Torres is now taking really what is his wiring to coach people, and he's getting to do that through C12. Hey, it's Steve. And if any of this conversation resonated with you today, just know this: you don't have to go it alone. Here at Wayfind Marketing, we offer marketing coaching designed specifically for CEOs and their marketing leaders who want clarity, alignment, and a real plan. And Torres, who you heard from today, I had the opportunity to work with him and his team for almost a year as their marketing coach. And we've worked with leaders like Torres who have spent months spinning their wheels, or in Torres's case, was a new CEO and was trying to do more with the team that they had. And once they had a strategy, things finally started to click. So we help you simplify your marketing, focus on what's actually driving results, and building a strategy and a marketing system that fits your team and your growth goals.
Thanks again to Torres for such a powerful conversation. And thanks to you for listening. If you got value out of today's episode, share it with a fellow CEO who, like Torres, is working hard to lead with more purpose and clarity.
And don't forget to hit follow or subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. And depending on your podcast platform, if you can leave a review, please do. And we've got more real conversations and strategy-first insights coming your way.
See you next time on the Growth Minded Marketing Podcast.